Welcome to The Hypnotist, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. Brought to you by the hypnotherapist demanded by celebrities, CEOs, and even royalty, Adam Cox. These recordings took place live from Adam's clinic in London's world-famous Harley Street. This podcast features powerful hypnosis, so do not listen while driving or operating machinery. This recording is not suitable for those with epilepsy or severe mental health issues. So, get yourself comfortable and enjoy today's episode of The Hypnotist.
Hi, it's Adam here, and in this episode of The Hypnotist, we're going to be doing a hypnosis session that is designed to help those people that have set New Year's resolutions or intentions that they want things to be different this year compared to the last year. Now, as I record this, it's the 1st of January. Many people may be celebrating with a bit of a hangover, but still with this element of an idea that there is a particular change that they want to make. I've worked with a lot of clients, and one of the key things that tends to be a barrier that can impede change is the element of inertia. And I mean, without getting too scientific here, if you think of in physics, inertia is when something is stationary. So if you imagine a ball on a table, it doesn't move unless it has some kind of external force. But with a tiny bit of external force, it can then create momentum. And human change is a lot like that, in the sense that if someone has a particular behavior and they've done things in that way, it requires very little effort for them to keep doing that behavior. And sometimes that behavior might be a negative or unuseful behavior. It could even be damaging to their health or finances to continue with that. But it's easier to keep doing what you have been doing. Where the law of inertia and momentum comes into this is that generally on the 1st of January, a lot of people have clarity, maybe for the first time in weeks or months, about one key area of their life that they want to change. And if there is a passiveness to that, if it's just, well, I hope things will change, or, you know, I'll hopefully get around to it, and they don't back it up with some kind of external, intrinsic effort to steer it in a particular direction, then the whole likelihood really is that they will revert back to whatever their default thinking or beliefs or behaviors are within that context. Now, what you can do is you can completely change that by setting out a very specific chain of events that takes the momentum in the other way. And it's worth talking about the term trajectory in this sense. So if you imagine that behavior on its current trajectory is going to keep going on that trajectory unless there's some external force, and an external force can be something like a decision. But if the decision is backed up by action, that can change the trajectory, so that if you think of a trajectory over time, well then typically what happens when people make a change in their life, even if they back it up by action, they don't tend to see a lot of change in the short term. The changes take place because the trajectory is taking their future into a very different destination, but that requires time in between the decision and then the benefits quite often of that action. So what you're going to hear in this hypnosis session is a hypnosis session designed to connect with that part that wants to make the change, but then backs that up. And the way that inertia and momentum work is that the more effort that you put in to backing up that change with actions and behaviors that align with that change, the more likely momentum will mean that it carries on beyond where that good intentions and the hype or the burst of inspirational motivation wears off. The momentum will take it a lot further. So find a quiet place where you won't be disturbed, relax, and enjoy the session. Take a deep breath in. And as you breathe in, imagine breathing in a resourceful feeling of relaxation. And as you exhale, just get a sense that tension, stress, anxiety is leaving your body in your outward breath. As you breathe in and breathe out, just allow, if it's safe to do so, your eyelids to close. And as they close, continue to breathe in through your nose and out through your nose. And on your outward breath, just give yourself permission to release any tension, enabling you to feel deeper and deeper relaxed on each and every outward breath. Breathing in that resourceful feeling of relaxation and exhaling tension. And in your mind's eye, I want you to create an image of what's called Newton's Cradle. You might just think of it as balls on some string all connected together on an executive table, an executive toy, one of those desk articles. And you might imagine 5 balls, metal balls, all just being hung completely stationary there on that desk. And I want you to get a sense that if you just look at Newton's cradle and don't do anything, then the balls don't move. And you can want the balls to move, but that won't mean that they will. You might have an idea of what it would look like for one to be raised high, released, and then creating a chain reaction across the other 4. But just thinking that isn't enough to make that happen. And I want you to think that the balls in Newton's cradle represent a change that you would like to make. That might be a change to your eating habits, how you exercise. It might be how you wake up in the morning or how you approach your work. And I want you to get a sense that as you think of Newton's cradle there with those shiny balls suspended there in that cradle, not doing anything, that's exactly like your change. But I also want you to accept that as you think about that cradle, you know what would happen if you just picked up one of those balls and you raised it high, and you know that if you release it, then a single ball at the opposite end of the cradle will then rise up in the air. And as it falls down, it will then create the opposite ball to rise and fall. And while the initial effort to lift that original ball might be insignificant, it creates a chain reaction. It creates a chain reaction where more happens as a result of that initial effort. I want you to imagine what it would be like if you lifted 2 balls up and then released them. And perhaps you already know that then 2 balls would raise on the opposite side of Newton's cradle. There is a fine line between wishful thinking and strategic planning. And one of the key things that separates the two is the willingness to take action to back up the plan. I want you to think of that one area of your life where you want to make a change. And realize that If you don't do anything, then your life is on a trajectory that will take yourself into a future version of you where you already know where you're likely to end up. And I wonder what you would need to do differently to take a subtly different trajectory. In the world and in life, there is two major types of change. There is revolutionary change, while we try and do everything differently. And in humans and in societies, revolutions are short and before long tend to return to something the same or similar to how it was before. The more powerful change is evolutionary change. Tiny things that you can do differently that require minimal effort to keep doing them. The kind of things that your unconscious mind can automate, get into a routine, do them again and again. So for example, if you wanted to lose weight, revolutionary change will be to go on some crazy diet where you change everything that you eat. Whereas evolutionary change might be to identify that one food type that you eat that you know that is taking your life into increasing body weight, and wondering if that one thing you could replace it with something healthier. Wouldn't create any difference in the first day or week, but over a year, once you've automated and maintained that subtle change, you might find that in a year you've saved thousands of calories. And sometimes when you make a single change and you get used to that change, the momentum builds where you can introduce another simple, subtle change. And the changes can build on the changes and build on the changes to create a snowball effect. And I want you to imagine a mountain. Imagine a mountain with deep snow. And imagine yourself at the top of that mountain. Imagine a high mountain with valleys and just countryside far, far below. And create the idea of what it would be like to make a tiny snowball. And then imagine rolling it down the top of that mountain. It would require sufficient force to enable the snowball to collect more snow as it rolls down. But assuming you pass that point of threshold, it reaches a point where the weight of the snowball is enough to allow gravity to keep it rolling down that mountain, collecting more and more snow as it gathers pace, until you have an unstoppable snowball racing down the mountain. And I wonder, what would it take for you to create that level of momentum in your life? What would you need to do to get the ball rolling in the right direction? The initial burst of energy. And what you find is that that's where discipline and motivation are at their most valuable, because at that point in time, you're doing something against the grain, against friction, against inertia. But as it builds pace, it gets easier and easier and easier. And I want you to imagine two futures. A future where you do very little, even though you do want the change. And just follow that life for the next year. Your life, where you know what you want to do, but you're not doing too much to support it. See how the days turn into weeks, and before long perhaps you've gone back to your very old behaviors that mean that change will not take place at all. And then imagine a different future, where the first few days or weeks are supported by massive action, focused determination, the discipline required, not forever, but just at the beginning. What would you need to do today, tomorrow, this week? What does massive action even look like in this key area of your life? And as you think about that, notice that when you follow that life over the next 12 months, isn't it the case that you end up as a very different person? That key area of your life, you did indeed make the change you wanted to make. That the laws of inertia and momentum have been applied for you rather than against you. I want you to get a sense that not only that you could do these things, but what would it be like for you to actually do these things? Where would you need to be? Who would you need to work with? Do you need to buy anything to support this decision? Do you need to make a public commitment to someone else to hold you to account, to ensure you do the thing you say you're going to do? Change is simple and yet complex. But the laws of change mean that effort or force is required to change the default trajectory. Imagine that your life is on autopilot and you're using manual control to fight against the autopilot to take you to a new destination. Don't you need to know what that new destination is? And don't you need to be consistent until you're naturally flying in that way? I want you to imagine that you are unlocking all of the resources necessary for you to be that version of you that will back up your intention with effort. Realizing that when you pass the point of threshold, when your brain accepts that this is part of your everyday life, that you won't back away from this goal, this resolution, this intention. When you pass that point, it just happens by itself. And you know that to be true because as you look inwards in your life, so many of the things that you do daily, you don't think about. Maybe you brush your teeth daily. Maybe you have a routine for your health or beauty, how you dress yourself. And just realize that there is at least one person in the world that doesn't do that thing that you do automatically. But to begin with, it required effort until the subconscious took over. You are playing a game of chicken with your subconscious mind. And who will flinch first? The conscious or the subconscious? When you resolve to make that change, back it up with clear, consistent actions, behaviors, thoughts, and beliefs, it reaches a point where the subconscious mind doesn't fight, but it accepts. It arrives at the conclusion that if you're going to do this thing, I may as well help you. And at that point, your effort and your struggles can disappear. As at that point, your subconscious mind does the heavy lifting. And it only requires your conscious involvement if there is a strategy change in your approach. Have a clear idea of what you will be like 1 year from now if you commit to this change. See that version of you with all the benefits that change will give you. And know that you have the resources to become that person. Now I want you to return to the present, focusing on my voice. Take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your nose. Just wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes. Get a sense that you're in your own physical body right now, because very soon I will count from 1 to 10 to awaken you. You will awaken feeling resourceful, motivated, absolutely committed to this one key change that you want to make in your life. Starting to count to awaken you. 1, 2, 3, waking up. 4, 5, 6, more alert. 7, 8, open your eyes, open your eyes. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake.
Thank you for listening to The Hypnotist with Adam Cox, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. To automatically receive the latest episodes, please subscribe. If you'd like to support the show, please share this episode with just one friend you think it could help. And if this episode helped you, please leave us a 5-star review.